Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'd like to call our special meeting of the Town Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Today is Monday, April 28th at 6 p.m. My name is Rob Klee. I'm the chair of our Woodbridge Town Planning and Zoning Commission. Other members of the commission who are with us here tonight include Jeff Kennedy, Kathy Hunter, Aaron Hoffman, and we may have one or two others join us at some point. Chris Sullivan, always nice to see you. You support us as our town land use analyst and zoning enforcement officer. We're here in person. Nice to see everyone. Our agenda tonight has been available on the town website. Our special meeting tonight is about our commission's plan of conservation and development, and we're going to have a conversation with our consultant, SLR, on the ongoing work to develop this plan of conservation and development, and give feedback and discuss some drafts of various key components of the plan of conservation development that are being, so that were the subject of a open house and other activities over the last few weeks. So we will probably get caught up on where we stand in the process and then spend the bulk of our hour together diving into some of the suggested changes, edits, and updates. So with that, Robert, I pass it over to you, and thank you for joining us.
Okay, great, thank you. Just for the record, I'm Robert Collins, and I'm the project manager with SLR, assisting you all with your POCD update. As I was mentioning before, I am having allergy issues right now, and my throat is kind of scratchy, and I'm drinking lots of water. So I hopefully my voice won't completely give out, but I appreciate your understanding. We do have, we are kind of getting into the final stages of the development of the POCD update, as you know. And tonight, we're kind of looking at several documents to kind of that, we're gonna be leading to that closing out of like the final draft. I have we have quite a bit to potentially talk about, and I'll just lay it out now because I know we have like a hard stop at 7 o'clock. That most likely we probably should already plan on like having a second meeting, and maybe that will be primarily to focus on the future land use plan, which is the last piece for tonight, and maybe we'll just know that that's most likely going to be like at a follow-up meeting, which we need to have relatively soon. But the three other documents that we have that are for you tonight was one that is when last month in March, when we first went over the theme areas and the goals and the strategies and the action steps, when we gave that to you, we asked everybody to get us comments. And the second document that we have is actually a consolidated comment document based on the comments that we received from 3 commissioners, and some of you that maybe didn't submit anything, you may have some comments that you want to talk about, so we'll do that. But in getting those comments for the goals, strategies, and actions, we also received some comments related to the vision statement. And so just so that we can kind of wrap that up and get it into the document, I wanted to, so the first document that we're going to review is this document here, which is the vision statement, the one-pager. It may, if you have a black and white copy, it may be a little hard to see, although I think the grade items might be clear. But Commissioner, and whoever submitted it, you may want to chime in if you want to, have made some suggestions on maybe adjusting some wording based on some current situations that might make more sense. And then we also internally, we start to have our documents reviewed by a technical editor, and they had made the other suggested edits, which are, I think, keeping in similarity to what was being said, but just kind of said it in a slightly different way.
Can I just pause one moment? These documents are or will be available on the website?
This document is available already on the website, because this one has been, the vision statement, because this has been, agreed to you. I forget whether we posted this, because this is a draft, I don't know if we posted the goals and strategy. No, we did, because they were at the open house. Yeah, so the goals and strategies have been posted too. What hasn't been posted yet is just the technical summary memo, but that's what we're going to talk about tonight.
Thank you.
Also.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
No, that was a good point. So as far as the underlined items or the strike through items on the vision statement, is there agreement on these items, or anybody want to talk about them, or do we want to go through them line by line and kind of decide yay or nay? Is there a preference? And Commissioner who submitted some comments, do you want to discuss them at all as to why you were suggesting that?
I'm just scanning it real quick. I don't see anything that I think is a problem. I guess suburban community went in and came back out, and I was back in the first one.
Right, well, it still says suburban community,
Yeah.
but it just, instead of saying it, like, it's
Near.
fewer words.
Yeah, it's fine.
And that's your wordsmithing kind of technical editor that's
Yeah,
trying
just
to
kind of
okay.
cleaning
make
it up a
things.
little bit, like reads
Yeah.
more clear. And they're just suggestions. The ones though related to equity were ones that were maybe saying the same thing but maybe using a different word.
I have one suggestion under the pursuing responsible growth and housing diversity. You have Woodbridge will facilitate sustainable growth through economic development. And they have diverse and variable housing opportunities. I'm not sure what variable means, but I would think you could just say diverse housing opportunities to make it simpler.
Sure, I mean, that one is the comment that came in from a commissioner, just like being cautious about the word equitable, and that was what was in there, but it could just say housing opportunities.
Or diverse.
Diverse
Yeah.
housing opportunities.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because I don't know what a variable housing
No.
opportunity is.
I never heard of that.
Agreed. But just was giving the commissioner their say, so to speak. Okay, so we'll just take out the word variable.
That's fine with me.
And variable, so it just says diverse housing opportunities.
Okay. Okay with the other comments or adjustments?
Equity is highlighted at the bottom of embracing sustainability, but
The only reason, I
Was it
mean, the
added?
only
It
reason
wasn't
why I was
added.
there, because I was just showing where that word came up again, but what's here was, these are not actually in the vision statement, those were just what the goals would be, but now we flushed out those goals. And so when we get to the goals, when that word comes up, we might want to consider those slight adjustments. So that's why that's not crossed out there, because none of this moves forward with the actual just vision statement, where it says goals and goals and focus areas in the final plan, if that makes any sense.
so these italicized paragraphs are placeholders for the headers of what is
Right,
in the.
yeah. Right, so
The
these
things below.
became this document here, which is much more fleshed out.
I understand. Anyone else have anything else to comment on, add, subtract? Otherwise it looks fine to me.
Okay? Okay, great, okay, well, we got that taken care of.
Hey, see?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we move into the actual goals and strategies and actions, which is that expansion of those italicized items in the vision statement. And as you, like I said, as you might recall, we presented these to you back at our March meeting. Everybody had several weeks to review, and some of you submitted comments. Some of the comments, the comments are either shown as in strike through and underlining, or they show up as a comment, because again, some of the comments we received didn't actually submit like a change, but just put in something to consider. My original comments to the TPZ are also in here, so if a comment says TPZ dash, that was what I was asking you, a question, and then if it says TPZ comment received, it explains, what was stated there. So I realize that this is a little bit challenging to do, not having like a screen and like being able to point to, but do you want to go page by page and we'll just kind of review them?
Sure.
Okay, so on page 1 under goal 1, There was some edits that came in under strategy 1.1, which was changing it from guide future growth to be consistent with existing land use patterns, environmental protection, and infrastructure capabilities, to change that to say infrastructure capabilities and needs of town and regional residents.
So that's an edit you made based on feedback from commission members, right?
Yeah, that's a direct comment that we received from
Regional
them. So I'm not necessarily in support for or against, I'm just sharing it with you.
Understand. So regional residents would be people that live outside of the town, right?
Potentially, yes, that's correct.
Potentially, okay.
Which is covered by another, later where it talks about coordinating with, the region. So it's a matter whether the needs of the town might be automatically implied, in the overall P O C D.
Yeah.
But regional residents and putting them into a strategy might be a more bold statement.
It's the kind of thing that I agree with, but I'm also wondering if it seems like putting it in bold in the, right there will end up just drawing more fire from opposition than we want right from the start. I'm not really sure how to handle, there'll be people who oppose to everything, so it's
Yeah.
whether.
There's a constant
Yeah.
could take hours. Here's my 2 cents, okay? If someone really wants to defend it, they can, but the POCD is of the town of Woodbridge, so I think it should be more Woodbridge focused, so I'm not in favor of using regional residents.
Yeah, but under the Public Enabling Act, it has changed that we have to plan and zone for the town and the region that the town belongs in. So that is a change in our zoning enabling act, so I feel it needs to be there. I think it would sound better, needs of town and,
How about just in the region?
and the region, yeah.
Needs of the town and the region.
Mhm.
That's a statutory change, right,
Yes,
Kathy?
yes,
Okay, yeah.
Public Act
Yeah.
2129.
Got it, okay.
Okay, everybody comfortable with that?
Yes.
Sure.
Do you need an Oxford comma? You had one before. Infrastructure capabilities, comma, and the needs of the
Right.
town and the region, period. I'm a fan of the Oxford comma.
Yeah, I usually do that too. Okay, let's see, now moving down to action item E, under that, we had suggested that there would be in this one an action item about review and amend the town zoning regulations. There's actually, it talks about it in several ways, and as I had mentioned, since the potentially setting up strategies for zoning regulations once the POCD is updated, that kind of statement gets mentioned, can get mentioned multiple places as like, that subject is appropriate, like if it's something that you want to change the zoning ordinance. And in this particular case, the zoning ordinance is being mentioned in 2 different action steps, which is appropriate. One, to say that it needs to be consistent with the POCD and Connecticut general statutes, but then E would be talking about maybe modernizing or simplifying the existing regulations, as maybe, it could be a blanket statement in case anything comes up in the next 10 years, or you could be more specific. There was a TPZ member comment that was received, you can see that comment there. And that potentially, some variation or language there or consideration for that could potentially go there. So my question is do we keep it simple, or do we add some specifics that you all are desiring to change in the zoning ordinance?
So I guess my question is, this is goal 1.1, strategy 1.1.1. Is this the place where you'd want a laundry list of 25 different sort of zoning sort of changes and updates, or do you want a general statement that we should look for opportunities to simplify and modernize, and then in each of the subsequent ones, would you then have as an action item wherever it makes sense to have action item G always be, and or consider updating the zoning rules to allow for faster approvals of economic, things in the economic zone, or whatever, like, is it better to cram it all into 1.1, or put them
Well-
in their subject matter space.
I mean, you're doing a good job repeating what, or summarizing what I just was trying to say, is that, it will come up again in others where there might be something specifically for economic development, but this one is in the growth, like, patterns. This is more the one that's more for the TPZ, that might be more related to setbacks, or, something that's not a specific use, like, or, sustainability, or engineering practices, which, or, you know, that might come up in a later one.
I think general is more appropriate at this point. By beginning to list things, you're excluding things that aren't mentioned.
Right, like if there was a known, like if you knew right now, like you all had been working on, I know that you have a lot of other issues going on within the TPZ right now, but say that you had been having trouble with a setback in a certain residential district, and you knew that like next year you would really like to make that a priority because you've talked about it, that could be specifically mentioned. But if that's not the case, then I think keeping it generic or somewhat general will allow you to amend them as you may need to. It's really just if you already know of something that uniformly you all agree on, that it could be mentioned, just so that it's clear in case there's, it doesn't happen for 2 or 3 years, and maybe there's like turnover in staff or on the commission.
Sure, but even that example of a setback in the residential district, I could also think of putting that in as a specific recommendation in
Sure.
one of the ones on housing, and you could always.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm leaning towards having this first opening section with a general call for us to find ways, which is something we have seen routinely. Why are we having a big
Right,
public
right.
hearing on something that seems like it could? And maybe that's, to the extent there's a general statement of find ways to make our process streamlined, and support, I'm not actually gonna be very good at crafting words at this
I
hour,
was
but
thinking of like removing regulatory barriers to development. I mean, so you're not like, you know, requiring a public hearing when you don't have to have a public hearing, things of that sort.
are folks comfortable with something? And Robert, feel free to say, good version of that language might be X or Y. But I think that is something we found over at my time, at least on planning and zoning, is that we would occasionally have, why are we having a public hearing on this? It seems like this could have been done administratively, so.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, you could say something to, including development standards and uses to, I mean, it's, you know, reduce bureaucratic barriers could be said, or just to say to make the zoning regulations more in line with town priorities or goals or something like that.
Well, I like the idea of removing regulatory barriers, because I think it is something we've been talking about.
Is everybody comfortable with that, or?
Yes, and simpler, shorter, less language.
You said regulatory barriers, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's better than, I didn't like the word bureaucratic. Okay, the next one for
There are
Jake.
other parts of this comment that I think might be good to hold on to, perhaps for the housing side we can get to at a later page, but I don't want to lose the other. This one seemed to suggest a few things. Mixed use
To
development in
really-
the business district and,
To allow certain developments to proceed without, or affordable housing projects to, and certain developments to proceed without special permits.
well, I don't want to lose those if we want to add them to a discussion later.
Right. They may reappear too, so.
Yeah, I think they are, some of them are mentioned in the housing section.
Great.
Okay, the next one on G is related to the country club, and that's just really a note that says that that one is potentially continuing to evolve. That was the current language that talking to town staff, was appropriate, but we'll we'll continue to keep you posted on that.
This is written as if we are developing and evaluating well, we're developing and evaluating. Well, here's a question. It seems like that is happening outside of our commission,
Right.
the development at least of that plan. We will evaluate anything that comes in front of us, so.
Well, remember, while most of these are, this is your plan, there will be an implementation plan. So the implementation plan for this particular action step would indicate who the responsible entity is, and most likely it would say the board. Selectmen with, supporting entity would probably be you and like Economic Development Commission and things like that. So the implementation plan will kind of clarify who the responsible party is.
Okay, that's helpful.
If it's not, because all these things, everything that's in here can be solely, your responsibility. Some of it is staff, but that's, as soon as we have the action steps all agreed to by the TPC, that implementation plan will get put together pretty quickly, and then we'll share that back with you.
And that maps to who is primary and then who's
Right, and also the
supporting.
time frame, which is, your existing plan has an implementation plan, so it would be very similar.
Okay.
And that is something that, once we feel that the, plan itself is in good shape as far as the goals, strategies, and actions, and then you actually see the plan, the implementation plan, just to finalize like responsible entities and time frame, will be something that we can work on after it goes into its 65-day review period. So we don't have to have that necessarily in place in order to start that. So that will give us something to be working on while we're soliciting comments from the public for those 65 days. Okay. The next one under goal 1.2, strategy 1.2.1D, there was a comment about, it was a move forward from the previous plan about high added value commercial base, which it wasn't really clear on that, but we did get a good suggestion from a commissioner that just said, let's cross out the beginning and then just say enhance the commercial base. Is that everybody good with that one?
Fine with me.
I do know E uses the same high value added commercial businesses,
Mm.
if we still don't know exactly what that is.
Anything that comes with a tax benefit, right, is high value.
Like dispensaries, you get that? Isn't there?
And that was
Liquor
such
stores or liquor stores?
I think, wasn't there a thing where
There's a
towns
tax.
got part of the tax on sale of marijuana?
I don't know if that's what this is referring to, because this is 2015-ish language, right?
Yeah. Just valid,
Just carry it on.
tax benefit of high value, I don't know. Yeah, you're probably right. But we should also.
How about the
Something
state
that-
tax benefits of
something
And
enhanced,
lotto stores,
Yeah.
right?
state tax benefits of enhanced commercial businesses, or of commercial businesses
That
Not just-
support,
Tax benefits
support.
of added commercial businesses,
added.
or beneficial commercial businesses.
What is beneficial
Benefits of-
commercial?
But what are
Well,
the
what's high
state
value?
tax benefits? I just don't, what even is the,
this is a carryover from before, when we met with the Economic Development Commission, they didn't really make an edit to this. We could circle back to them to see, we could also cross it out if you're on, it doesn't have to be in here. It seems like it's something that is supportive of businesses, to be able to share information and be business friendly, but.
State updated on the state tax benefits that help commercial businesses. This is just telling us to keep apprised
No, that-
of
yeah.
what's going
Right.
on, so we should.
And if there are tax incentives that we can recommend to people who want to do business in Woodbridge, then, yeah, that's,
Okay, so stay up to date on state tax benefits that
Can help.
support.
Can help support,
yeah.
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 Okay. Okay, under letter I on the next page, Previously, well, we did change the language a little bit in it, but previously there was actually some specific sites that were called out. We did adjust these based on our conversations with staff as well as with the Economic Development Commission. We wanted to find out, if you wanted to still mention these sites, if you wanted to add to them or subtract. We did receive a couple of comments from commissioners that did give some, but also suggested that maybe we don't mention any specific sites.
I was in the don't mention any specific sites category, because I felt just keeping it general would be better. When you actually name things, I think it can make it murkier.
So for example, the former Subaru dealership site is now.
Yeah, it says
McGill's.
dealership. It's not a super
McGill's.
dealership. So it just seemed a little odd. So that's where I fall on this. If other people feel strongly, take it over from here, please.
But I think it's pretty generic to say vacant, underutilized parcels. You're not naming anything.
That would be my view too.
Yeah, but that's already covered in seek out businesses, housing, community amenities on large opportunity parcels in the business and commercial area. You can do parentheses, DEF1, DEF2. Or actually, is that too restrictive? You just say DEF1, DEF2 is a little. I'm leaning on the side of not identifying anything that will, in 2 years, look like
Yeah, this is, how long is this plan?
10 years.
10 years.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would say,
Strike it.
I would just take that
Yeah.
whole thing out.
I mean, I know from and I'm not defending them, but I know that from the Economic Development Commission, they probably want to have something that marketed, but they also have other tools that are doing that. I think for your purposes, it's probably better to be generic. Okay, so we're gonna eliminate that like sub-bullet there and then just keep the I the way that it is without naming the specific sites. Under strategy 1.2.2, letter E, there was a comment that was received that since, again, this was somewhat carried forward, or maybe it was amended slightly by our conversations with the Economic Development Commission, that they had suggested that we coordinate, or the town, when I say we, with the Amity Chamber of Commerce. But then there was a comment that came in that says maybe since we're on that the business district is on the New Haven border, that maybe we engage with the greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce.
How about just engage with
Local chambers.
local chambers?
Because it's
of commerce?
Derby, you
Is
have
there even
Seymour.
an Amity Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah, there is.
Is there?
There's Orange and Bethany, but, I mean, I made the comment for, I feel it's more advantageous to do the Greater New Haven because it is a gateway when you.
New Haven abuts Woodbridge,
Right,
clearly.
Right, and
So-
just when you're coming in, that the New Haven side,
Understood, yeah.
if that was,
I would advocate more to just call it local chambers of commerce,
including,
include, if you want that, sure.
It might be good to specifically highlight the Amity one, just because it's newly established, but maybe it says engage with newly established Amity Chamber of Commerce and other regional chamber of commerces, to help maintain relationships with businesses.
sure, but is it newly established?
I've never heard of it.
I don't know, I've never heard of it.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that's not a holdover from 10 years ago.
No.
Like,
No.
it like has an office and stuff?
I don't know.
So I think
what's the office anymore?
I think it's fine to engage with the newly established Amity Chamber of Commerce to help maintain relationships with businesses and engage with regional chambers of commerce, including the new, I don't know. Is that getting
Just
too
leave
wordy?
it and other regional chambers of commerce, because
I do think you should mention the Greater New Haven. I think it's important to engage with the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce. I think they're an important group.
We could say engage with the greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce and other regional
Chambers,
chambers.
that's fine.
605A Orange Center Road.
That's the Amity.
Is that like near Orange Center? Probably.
It's orange.
Yeah. Sorry, Robert, did you?
Yeah, I think is that okay? We'll add both the second, like an N that you had suggested, but we'll put in the Greater New Haven,
And other.
specifically and other regional ones.
Great.
Okay, so under, if we move down to strategy 1.2.3, this is where we talk about the zoning regulations again, but it's specifically related to the business district. This was one that we kind of talked about, adjusting from previous, but then also with our internal conversations. And we, one thing that came up was permitting mixed-use residential. But there was a comment that was received, well, this one actually came in from administration that just said rezoning for greater area and opportunities for mixed use.
Because it probably should be expanding, because we already have some.
So expanding opportunities for mixed use residential?
Okay?
What is rezoning for greater area? In the comment.
I think what we had heard from internally was like maybe like it goes outside of the like current business district boundaries for other maybe appropriate sites to,
Oh.
to
Yeah,
increase
I
the
know.
opportunity for commercial
Mhm.
entities to assist with the town's tax base.
Because most of the business is not zoned for mixed use.
But is that comment saying, so I like where this is going in general, so review and update the zoning regulations for the business district. But this is the one just on the business district, this particular goal, because what I see what that comment said, and in the adjacent districts, let's say going slightly up the hill towards the JCC, there may be opportunities there as well for,
Right.
but this strategy is only about the business district, but that's technically not the business district. So I'm not sure it's saying expand the business district up that direction, but it seems to be expand opportunities for mixed-use development, so,
I thought it was to expand the opportunities for mixed use within the business district,
yes, but I think that greater area
Yeah.
may be suggesting, because
outside of
this is
business district.
outside the business district as well for mixed-use development, which I think is something that we should, I'm in favor of having a signal to say, yes, we're interested in expanding mixed-use development within the business district and potentially slightly outside of it. And I don't mean to use the word slightly, actually, but and outside of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it could, again, review and update the zoning regulations for the business district as needed, and consider expanding opportunities for mixed-use residential in adjacent.
In the business district and in adjacent districts.
Where can I sit?
Okay, so review and update the zoning regulations for the business district and consider expanding mixed-use, permitting mixed-use residential in the business district and adjacent districts. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
I mean, it could always be, once you see it in the next format, we could always tweak it a little bit.
Because I don't think there's another place to say that, unless we're saying it in the goal for on housing.
Well, and to invigorate the business district, it would be expanding, I believe.
Yeah, that's true.
And they can,
Yeah. So I think I like it where it is.
yeah, so when we get to housing, it could be similarly stated, since this one is specifically about the business district. Okay, and the next one, B, there was a comment that was received from a member, a commissioner that said, this was about the design standards for the Woodbridge Village District. And I guess there was some question about the Architectural Review Board and its current status. I know that we had talked about that. This comment was saying something about reinstating the Architectural Review Board,
It exists,
but it already exists, or they just not,
it's not being used.
Right.
We used it last, I think, when we got plans for the beer brewery. Right.
We weren't happy with them.
So we kind of went back and forth. It was useful to have, so we don't use it that often, but it's there if we want to use them, right?
Right,
There was some benefit that came from it. Yes, the beer brewery, it was like giant beer silos or something.
No, my recollection of that is that I wasn't thrilled with their review of,
it wasn't,
The
it didn't
design.
help,
it didn't.
Oh, it didn't contribute to our thinking on the matter.
No.
no,
Oh, it didn't, okay.
and that's why it was an issue.
Do we have actual existing members on the review
Yes.
board?
When do they meet?
They only meet when you send them something.
And someone stepped off, right? There's there's one or two open positions now, or no?
No, 2 people died.
Okay, well, I wasn't gonna say it like that, yeah, okay.
Step up.
They stepped off, I thought that was
Really
all.
stepped up.
Did that do, okay.
So you
Step
have
down.
openings for, typically what you had was you had 3 architects, you had a member from the business community down there, and you had a member from the residential community down there, because the residential is so intertwined with it. And what
Yeah,
we're lacking at the moment is a member from the business community and the residential community, but we have 3 architects.
and we don't have to use the architectural review board, but we have that as an option as a commission, right? Is that?
You refer stuff to them, and sometimes you've opted not to refer stuff to them.
Understood, okay.
But note that the second part of this particular action step does talk about, like, you know, in the future, reviewing the design standards for the business district and making sure that they're consistent, and high quality built form. And so it is talking about possibly studying the guidelines to see if they can be improved, which also might make your role or what you submit to them, if they get refined and if it's flowing in a better way, you might utilize them more, potentially. And I know that the Economic Development Commission, and again, you know, they commented that that was something that they were really hoping that would be considered. Because they see a lot of problems with the current regulations.
The reviewing the standards and.
Right, and the design guidelines. Not the zoning regulations,
No,
but the
yeah.
design guidelines. I guess they have been seen as not being as business friendly as they could be. Potentially, but
So,
we didn't say that, you know, we're just saying that, because you could always review them, so. But I guess this was only a comment, because I guess the commissioner wasn't aware that they don't need to be reinstated because they're existing, they're just not being used.
they're existing, we have current standards, so the language here says, let's review and, maybe, it says review and modify, which is a little more direct, perhaps, than maybe we just review
Modify as needed.
as needed, yeah.
And again, in the implementation table, this might be listed as like ongoing or as needed or long distance, you know, in the future, or something like that.
I mean, you could remove I guess, if we're not using, you could remove reference to the Architectural Review Board and just say, modify the Woodbridge Village District design standards to encourage economic growth while protecting and enhancing the, you know.
You could, but I guess, you know, what they were saying is that they wanted to make sure that the architectural review board was still in place, which is that they had a better set of guidelines to review.
Yeah. I'm fine with that.
So review and modify as needed. I think we're good with that.
Okay. For number G, Chris, this is something, Mika had brought up something about like incorporating something about the MRDA. You need to follow up with him on that. And then we could circle back to you all on that. Which is a funding source, are you familiar with the MRDA? It is something that's kind of getting reinvigorated, but it probably would be worth having an action step on it, but we'll see if we can get some language from the first selectman on that.
And would that be if we get more clarity for identify pursuit grants and other funding sources, e.g. the MDRA or
Right, or it could be an additional one, like G could stay as it is, and then there could be a separate one very specific about the MRDA.
I think they're calling it something else now, because it sounded like murder, so they, or calling it MDA now or something like that.
What does the acronym stand for?
Municipal redevelopment
redevelopment,
agency.
yeah, I think so,
Yeah.
redevelopment.
Also, the men's
Authority.
roller derby association.
Google. So that's still gonna be a TBD on that language?
Right, but we'll get that wrapped up. There was a last minute suggestion that came in from Mika also for you to consider that just was to add to here, which I think this one's probably a good one to add, but just wanted to get your confirmation. It just says engage with the city of New Haven to better integrate integrate the bordering business districts.
I'm fine with that.
Fine with
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Under the next strategy, 1.2.4, somebody did notice that there was the word character here, so it suggested that that could change to small town feel. Was that good? Okay.
Yes, sure.
And then here's another one, last minute suggestion from the first selectman that just had suggested, why don't we mention something about collaborate with Yale University to understand potential growth needs, and this is related to the regional coordination to advance the town's economy, which is the strategy, so that seems to be a pretty good addition too. If you all agree.
Where was that, please?
Right here,
C.
C.
Oh, there it is, yeah, okay, yes, okay, sure.
I'm gonna say this, and I don't know if I'm going to then retract it quickly. Yale University is one, it's obviously a big employer, but there's also the Yale New Haven Health System, which is another, I mean, a couple, you could run down, yeah, you could run down a list of things that are Yale related, but then are you also saying, why aren't we doing things that
Well,
aren't?
Quinnipiac or other universities
Yeah.
or.
I mean, I get Yale.
But you could say Yale University and this, and
And
other,
related
and
entities.
related entities and other
Major
regional
regional
universities
employers.
or stuff. You know,
But also major regional employers.
okay,
I totally am in favor of highlighting Yale, it's clearly a place that our town has lots of connections to.
no, I think that's a good addition, so we'll say, and Yale University and entities and other major regional employers.
Yep.
I think that's a good addition. Everybody okay with that?
Sure.
Okay, under goal 1.3, related to housing options, there was, under the first strategy, promote housing quality and maintenance in residential neighborhoods, there was a suggestion to add a letter B, expand homeowner rehabilitation program to serve income eligible residents. Is this an existing program?
Yes, under the small cities, community development block grant program, they do have existing funding, but you have to like reapply for the small cities, grants, and I think it's a good idea to try to replenish that. It's a, you know, it's a revolving loan fund.
But the town already, it is an existing program.
It's an existing, program, and,
But is the town participating in it? When you say existing, do you mean it's an existing program with the
no, because the
CDBG?
town has a program that's managed by the town.
Okay. Do you know what department?
I
Pat
believe,
Crisco,
Pat Crisco, yeah.
she's a tax collector.
Oh, okay, because I was wondering why that didn't come up with anybody that we talked with and we didn't talk with her.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And social services doesn't.
it's primarily Pat. I think there's references from social services.
I mean, I think in our conversations with social services, they did talk about many different grants and opportunities, but I don't know if, but I thought it was more framed in like it's for seniors, at least from our conversations with social services. But is this eligible for anybody that would be eligible to receive,
You'd have to be income eligible.
yeah, income eligible.
So it's not just, I agree with the seniors, but many seniors are income
Right.
eligible because they're on a
Okay.
fixed income.
I think it's good to include, I just wanted to get a background, because we're gonna have to put it in the implementation table, and I wanted to
Yeah.
kind of get a better sense of who might be the responsible entity and also.
Yeah, I was trying to get him to reapply because it comes out every year. But there is, it takes a lot, I don't want to say it's high capacity, but it's, CDBG grants are not the easiest grants to administer, and so there's a trade-off.
Right. Okay, I mean, I think it's still worth mentioning, and it could also evolve, as things maybe evolve, but there's definitely room here to have something else about, just general home quality and maintenance and things like that, so I think it's good. Okay, under the next one, I think we had talked about this for a while, but instead of housing diversity, we were kind of like talking about housing options. And then there was under B, under strategy 1.3.2, in addition to talking about smaller housing and including accessory dwelling units, there was a suggestion from a commissioner to add and 2-unit developments.
There's a typo there. To diversify. It says to.
Oh, yeah, diversify, not diversity.
Oh,
Where is the typo?
After
it's
the
after
red,
developments.
it says to diversity
To diversity is
instead of
the
to
top.
diversify.
Oh, okay. Yes.
First
Good
typo I
catch.
ever caught in my life. My English teachers will be so proud.
Is everybody okay with adding 2-unit developments?
Yeah.
Back in A though, is this where we want the language to be parallel, review and update the zoning regulation to permit mixed-use residential in the business district and the whatever adjacent
Okay,
areas, is that?
Because we do permit, permit it, but it would be to expand.
and expand,
Expand opportunities, it kind of have the language mirror
Yeah.
what we wrote in the one.
Yeah, in the first one.
okay,
And 1.2.3A.
right. Okay. If we go to page 4, it was suggested that we kind of have a parking space here in housing related to possible mixed use and housing from the country club site, depending on how that pans out. So that's kind of like a parking space, and we'll keep you posted on that.
And that specifically says senior housing, which, is it meant to just be senior housing?
Well, that's what we were told a month ago, but again, that, like I said, that might be evolving.
Yeah.
No, it's senior and mixed, and residential housing.
So maybe commercial and housing.
Yeah, I'll put a question mark for senior for right now, but we'll. Under strategy 1.3.3, instead of explore, it was a commissioner suggested that we change that to promote. And then also to add the word create affordable housing. I think those are, appropriate adjustments if everybody else does.
Sure.
There was, under letter A, there was a question about how that the affordable housing plan will be incorporated into the POCD. That's something for us to, I guess, get clarity. I think, we talked about this at the open house. Because it can get incorporated by simply just mentioning it like this. Some of the items, though, that I think that you would, when we met with you based on the housing committee, I think you kind of gave me some, like, what your current recommendations were, and I felt that they had kind of gotten filtered in under, like, B through, B, C, D, E, and E.
And most of them did get, from what we recommended for the P O C D. I was just wondering in terms of actually referencing the plan, whether or not you have a link to the plan, or you have, you know, some,
Yeah, I mean, like in the write-up, in the chapters, there will be a whole discussion about the housing, but then also the affordable housing plan. You know, I don't know if we specifically indicated whether there'd be a link there, because that's something for us to figure out at the very end, you know, like when we're putting together the final document, if we put like a hot link in or something like that, but that could be added. It could also be potentially included as an appendix.
yeah, I mean, there is a part of the plan that has strategies, so maybe that part of the plan could be an appendix
Right.
to the plan.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I know that, and this is where we would just have to work closely with the committee on what we put, because I know the affordable housing plan, it does have that kind of it's like a big matrix. And it's not easy to say, okay, these are the 5 recommendations. But if you guide us on that, or you know, what we would include, unless we just include the full current affordable housing plan as an appendix. But we can talk about that, once we see like the final draft.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of existing conditions in the affordable housing plan that's pretty much, you know, outdated, so I don't think you would wanna put that in
That might be
there.
the case too, that you've
Yeah,
completed.
and there's surveys, so that's why I was thinking, maybe just the strategies,
Okay,
yeah.
well, we can definitely work, you know, we'll share it with the full group, but we can get something from you and say this is what the housing committee would like to put in as the appendix E or something like that.
How often is the affordable housing plan updated?
It has to be updated every 5 years.
So that'll run through at least one other iteration, so we need to be,
As amended, it needs to say, you know, if you refer to the plan, it has to be as amended, because
as
the board of
periodically
select,
amended, yeah.
yeah, because
And
the board of selectmen, I know, are also looking, I don't know what they're doing, but they're also looking
yeah.
So we'll add that in,
But I think this
Well,
language is
this
enough
is-
to say, there is an affordable housing plan that has recommendations, we should implement them. Correct? That's what this is.
well, that's what letter A says,
Yeah.
it says implement the recommendations of the town's affordable housing plan and continue to update the affordable housing plan as required by the state. So that's kind of
Yeah.
saying the same thing as what you
Yeah.
just said, but it could be reworded if you wanted
No.
to. Okay. There was a comment from a commissioner that just said that workforce housing and affordable housing have been used interchangeably. I'm not sure if this comment was referring to elsewhere in the POCD or like in the community as a whole. Because I know that if it was in the POCD document, as is indicated here, they are 2 different things, and we would make that very clear, so I wasn't sure if
Yeah, I think it's
you're
really just
referring to the
defining that,
community.
workforce housing, and that's like in the comments, you know, if it's gonna be workforce housing, you would wanna define it as, you know, between 80%, 120% AMI, because it has become more defined over the years.
Yeah, that's definitely, and that could be talked about in the text, but we could also put that in parentheses here. We could say provide opportunities for workforce housing, in parentheses, you could say 80 to 100% AMI.
Kathy, is workforce housing synonymous with affordable housing?
Well, it used to be, like, I would say like 10 years ago, like, they used to talk about workforce housing, and then they were just trying to find different words for affordable housing, because affordable housing, you know, had a bad stigma, so they would say workforce housing, but now workforce housing has been defined to be something else now. So,
But when when I talk about affordable housing in a development, and I'm making a presentation, I will go through and say that their affordable housing is workforce housing, if I'm talking to a community, because looking at the AMI bands, especially in an area of the country with a high income level, you know, even a 30% AMI restricted unit mostly is going to someone with a job. You know, it's was originally because of, like Kathy said, the stigma of, you know, people on public assistance, the idea that they would be the majority of new residents for affordable housing. So like that's, when I have a present, that's one of the things that I spend time on is, it's, you know, these are the people who are the residents, this is what the income that qualifies them to this, and this is what people in this community who make that income do, whether it's, you know, a first-year teacher or, you know, working at a restaurant or whatever. So, I mean, I think talking about both affordable and workforce housing is appropriate in this document.
Yeah, I mean, and as you both were kind of indicating, but, you know, in the state of Connecticut, both of those, I mean, you know, have very specific definitions, where affordable housing is a subject, and in the United States as a whole, it has a very broad understanding, as you said. But in the state of Connecticut, affordable housing, and since this is a POCD, which is a regulating document, we're kind of talking about it in the POCD from the state's definition.
Sure.
And the state definition for affordable housing, if you, unless you say like housing affordability or something like that, which I think we're talking about, but in this particular one, we're talking very specifically, because this is coming from the affordable housing plan. We're talking about affordable housing being for those that are eligible that make 80% of AMI or less.
Sure.
But then workforce housing is defined, you know, in the state of Connecticut very specifically as being that 80 to 120 AMI. And then because we're talking about housing affordability broadly, we want to talk about both of those groups.
I just thought you should define it so people, when people are reading this, they know what workforce housing is.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can make sure that ends up being in the text part, but I think as a note right now, we'll put it in C, like in a parentheses, just so that there's that clue, and so you'll see that in the text. Okay?
There isn't a glossary for this.
I'm
I'm not suggesting we need to create one.
Not traditionally, but like we do
Okay.
try to be careful of like defining words, or there might be, there could be a footnote or something like that.
I think a parentheses here that identifies workforce housing under the state's definition makes sense.
I think for D, I think we probably don't need to talk about, because there was a question about whether we wanted to change who the target was, and then I think we got a couple of commissioners separately joined in, but had a very similar statement about for young families and individuals who, and those looking for smaller housing options, I think is probably a good adjustment there. Everybody,
On D,
for D, yeah.
can you just put a period after the word option,
Got one.
We could.
and then just leave it?
So you don't want to add
You
for
don't wanna add
young
young
families or
families.
individuals?
Well, young families and individuals and those looking for smaller housing, it would be everybody if you just put a period after options, but however people want to say it's fine with me.
Any preferences, either being specific as to who we're targeting or just saying options? Any opinions?
What about middle-aged people? You're leaving us out. In other words, you know, I mean,
But those would be
Yeah, I think
individuals looking for
whatever you
smaller
guys want to
housing.
say, it's fine with
Well,
me,
could you say just households looking for smaller housing options?
period.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like middle-aged people might want that.
Yeah, no,
All right.
Okay. I know that letter F, Kathy, I think this was an addition from you, just which was another item, I guess it was coming from the the committee. Establish a housing trust fund.
And it's actually been discussed in the ordinance committee, because they're having an ordinance to make the housing committee a housing commission, and with that, they're going to have an ordinance for a housing trust fund. So it's something that's kind of in the works from the town's perspective.
Only question I have is if it's something that's still in the works, and because it's not, should it be explore or something, explore establishing, or is everybody else comfortable with just saying it as it is?
I think they're pretty set on, I mean, maybe talk to the town, but my understanding, they're pretty set on establishing a housing trust fund.
Okay. Is everybody okay with it as is? Okay,
Well, I'm probably in the explore establishing, to the extent that we don't know if it's.
It doesn't commit the town to doing it.
What about consider?
How about consider, yeah, it's a good word.
Okay.
okay.
That's good, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, on page 5, let's see.
I'll note that I can go into overtime for 10 more minutes if that's okay with, is that okay with folks? Yes, I know I promised them, but,
10 minutes short,
okay,
I second that.
We
okay,
might be able to wrap up.
Maybe get the page done or something.
yeah.
All right.
Most, under goal 1.4, I think this was some, we had talked about this both with town staff, but also, I think you all had mentioned this early on, but we were gonna maintain a public water system and maintain a public sewer, I'm sorry, let me take that back. We had talked, when you all had just seen the strategies, about changing it to maintain, but I think in talks with others, there was consideration for maybe it should say expand.
I like expand.
Yeah, I think we talked about expanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the town actually isn't the one maintaining anything, right?
No, and that's why it says, like, you would,
With
underneath
the
the
regional
action
water
step would be
authority,
that you'd have to
yeah.
coordinate with them, but,
And,
and it's, but you're all okay with the word expand?
sure.
Mhm.
Okay. The other comments that were here is, I think we actually got that question answered, Chris, there's that one about the, health district. And then I just recently got some comments back from the Greater New Haven Water Pollution Control Authority, and they didn't really have specific projects. So I'm gonna make that one that's highlighted in yellow a little bit more generic, although, I'm trying to remember, that study the feasibility of expanding existing water, like Brookside Farm stand in Bradley Highlands, a residential B, is that something that, did Mika give us that language?
I think so, because they've had some failures up there.
So they're gonna have to do some like improvements.
Well, they had one that got hooked into the sewer, and then there's one at the top of the road that the system failed, but I think they're replacing it with a septic, so they're not thinking at this point of bringing the sewer further up.
Okay, how about support the GNHWPCA's efforts to maintain and expand the public sewer system?
Okay.
And
But the-
collapse B and C together.
But the Greater New Haven Water Pollution Control Authority doesn't expand on its own.
Who would
The
expand?
town has to go to them. So they don't initiate expansion. The town has to.
What could we just say, support,
Well,
Greater New Haven Water Pollution Control Authorities in collaboration with the town?
well, maybe the B would be the support just the maintenance, but then maybe C becomes the town.
That's the expansion.
The town, the one about expansion, the town to
Support
study
the
the
town's,
feasibility.
yeah, support the town's efforts to study the feasibility of expanding the existing system, period.
Yeah, I don't know if we need the portion within the parentheses.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Okay, so not specific examples, okay. Okay,
5 more minutes. So we get through
okay,
strategy 1.
You can get through 7 if you get through 6.
okay,
Yeah,
on page 6,
so being 8.
okay, everything that's under strategy 1.5.1, these were
Safe and convenient.
these were some comments that, again, it's just trying to coordinate some of the road projects with town administration, so I think, I'll continue to evolve them, but I'm sure you all would probably be comfortable with this repeating when we get confirmation from town administration. For 1.5.2, this was, I guess, another one for town staff to figure out if there were specific locations about transit. But for right now, it's just coordinate with transit providers to expand transit service in town.
I'm sorry, going back to 1.5.1, which is, never mind, it's just road related. I take that back.
Right, on the recommendations, they were trying to tie into some like general road improvement stuff and stuff that the COG might be doing, but also if there's any specific projects that the town administration is kind of leading, or if there was a project that you as the TPZ wanted to support, but I imagine, I'm just making the assumption that you would, support town administration ongoing maintenance.
The only one that stands out to me is on parking, so F. There was a note on that one, 1.5.1F,
Oh,
that you're still discussing with Chris.
yeah, that was, did that get adopted or into the regulations?
No, we actually deleted that.
Yeah, the requirements of,
Yeah, that was part of the form-based zoning,
So
One
that
of
one
the
should go
diagrams.
away.
yeah.
I think in general, parking is a broader topic, that
Yeah,
our parking requirements can sometimes be barriers to development and make things harder, so I don't, yeah, I'm happy just striking that one.
Okay,
And would be even interested to the extent, explore updating our parking requirements to,
we don't have a chart, we have to make one.
hmm?
We're missing a chart.
So this is something we should do, we should explore updating our parking requirements
Yeah.
to enhance something.
Yeah.
well, that is something that, again, that's tied to the zoning code, and then that might be one that might go, like, in maybe are you talking about like related to like commercial uses?
Potentially.
So maybe that goes in economic development under where we talk about making some adjustments to the zoning code in the business district. We can have one that just, again, says it's for updating parking requirements within the commercial uses or something like that.
And I don't know the right way to say this, to encourage, ease of development or something, because, right, to the extent they are barriers.
Yeah.
But it would also be, it should be on commercial, but for mixed use as well, because parking
Yeah.
requirements
Or can be complicated.
yeah.
And yes, if there's a better place to put that than this one.
Yeah, so I'm making a note and then I'll find a place.
And that looks like I got us
We read to section 2.
to section 2. So appreciate folks joining. We have our regular meeting on May 5th, which is a full agenda, so we don't think we're going to ask Robert to come back then. It's also a tight turnaround for you, so, but
Right.
we would want to explore dates.
Yeah, theme area 1 had the most comments, as you can probably see. As you can see, theme area 2 doesn't have as many comments unless you have new comments. And then 3 has a few, but not as many as 1. So we probably should be able to make it through that pretty good. Just if you, with the documents that you got, a summary of the comments that we got from the open house, please take a look at the table that we put together of all the comments that were received from the public at that. We tied the comments that we received with, goals and strategies and action steps, with the exception of the ones that are highlighted in yellow, which you can see there's only like about a half a dozen that we might want to consider. So after we go through things here, the next thing would be to go through, feel free to take a look at the whole table, but we'll specifically look at to see if you want to make an adjustment based on the comments that were received. And then the last thing to do is then to look at to start looking at the future land use plan. And the future land use plan starts with the zoning regulations, to making sure that that plan is consistent with that, as well as the existing future land use plan that's in the existing POCD. So those were our starting points. We've laid out some pointers, and then we'll have a constructive conversation on that when we have our next meeting.
Right. And I think on May 5th, we will try to schedule that
Yeah,
meeting
we'll schedule
for
one.
shortly
Right.
thereafter, if that's okay.
Like maybe like the week of the 12th or something like that.
We'll do
Because that would be 2 weeks from now, and that would be good, but I understand.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure.